I spotted my daughter-in-law, Ashley, pitching my granddaughter Isabella's baby blanket into the garbage. I didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat. I sprinted to the dumpster and fished it out before it could disappear forever. With Isabella on my mind, I clutched that blanket and carried it straight home. When I spread it across my bed, my fingertips brushed over something unusual. There was a firm shape stitched into the fabric, tucked between soft layers of cotton. A chill of curiosity ran over me like a cold wave. I grabbed a pair of scissors from the drawer. My hands trembled as I carefully opened the seam, snipping thread after thread, and when I uncovered what was hidden inside, I was utterly stunned. Never, not once did I imagine something so tiny, so silent could hold so much horror, because what I found wasn't merely an object. It was proof, clear proof, of a lie that had stretched on for years. It was the buried truth about my son's death. It was the blackest secret my daughter-in-law had kept, and when I grasped what it truly meant, I knew my life would never return to what it had been. Before I go on, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from, because what I'm about to share still feels unreal even to me. My name is Elelenina, and I'm 69 years old. I've lived alone in this house for 3 years, ever since the day I lost my only child. Matthew was just 32 when headied. It happened in September, on a Tuesday afternoon. Ashley phoned me, sobbing, screaming, telling me Matthew had had an accident, that he'd fallen down the stairs in their home, that he'd hit his head, that he wasn't answering. I reached the hospital in 15 minutes. I drove like a madwoman, sweat slicked my hands as they gripped the steering wheel. When I rushed into the ER, Ashley sat hunched in a chair, her face buried in her palms. She wore a pearl grey dress. Dark bloodstains marked the sleeves. She looked up and ran to me. She wrapped her arms around me. She sobbed against my shoulder. I only wanted to see my son. I needed to see him. A doctor stepped out. He wore that heavy look doctors wear when they're about to deliver terrible news. Then he spoke the words that shattered my world. Matthew had passed. Severe head trauma. There was nothing they could do. I screamed, I wept. I collapsed on the cold hospital floor. Ashley held me. She kept saying we would be all right. That Matthew would have wanted us to be strong, but nothing was all right. Nothing would ever begin. My husband had died 15 years earlier of a heart attack, and now my son was gone too. Matthew had been everything I had left. He was a physician, brilliant, committed. He worked endless shifts at the hospital saving strangers. He'd married Ashley 2 years before headied. She was a nurse as well. They'd met on the job. He introduced her to me one Sunday afternoon. I remember a cream-coloured dress and a smile that was so flawless it felt almost staged. But Matthew was in love. His eyes glowed whenever he looked at her. He told me she was the love of his life, that he wanted a family with her, and I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe my son had finally found happiness. A year after the wedding, Ashley announced she was pregnant. Matthew was over the moon. He called me every day with updates about the baby. They bought a new house. They painted the nursery a soft pink. Matthew himself assembled the crib. I remember him so joyful, so full of hope, and when Isabella was born, it felt like life had handed me a blessing, a second chance to love and to care. My granddaughter was perfect, tiny, delicate, her dark eyes a mirror of Matthew's. I knitted that mint-green blanket with my own hands. It took weeks. Every stitch carried a piece of my love for her. Matthew adored it. He swore it was magic. Each time he wrapped Isabella in it, she'd stop crying. He guarded that blanket like a treasure. But after the accident, everything shifted. Ashley grew distant. At first I understood she was grieving too. She'd lost her husband too. She needed time and room. But as months slipped by, she brought Isabella over less and less. There was always a reason. The baby was ill. Work was overwhelming. She needed to reorganize her life. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to be the meddling mother-in-law. So I waited, I called. I asked if I could visit my granddaughter. Sometimes she agreed. Other times she simply didn't answer. And when she did allow a visit, something felt off. Ashley had changed. cooler, more remote. The warmth she used to fake was gone. Her eyes held a calculating edge that unsettled me. I chalked it up to grief. Matthew's death had altered her the way it had altered me. I tried to be patient. I tried to give her room, until one October afternoon, 3 years after Matthew's death. I'd bought a few toys for Isabella. I wanted to surprise her. I drove by Ashley's place to drop them in the mailbox. I didn't want to intrude. I just wanted my granddaughter to feel her grandmother was thinking about her. I parked across the street, and then I saw her. Ashley emerged from the garage hauling several bulging black trash bags. She dragged them with a hard, purposeful force toward the dumpster, and in one of those bags, something made my heart halt. Isabella's blanket. The mint green one I'd knitted with all my love. It lay crumpled, half spilling out of the bag. Ashley shoved it into the dumpster with a violent motion, as if she hated that blanket, wanted it obliterated. I froze. Why would she throw away something so meaningful? Why cast off a piece of Matthew's memory? I couldn't make sense of it. Ashley slammed the dumpster lid and went back inside. I waited a few minutes. My breathing came ragged. Rage and sorrow tangled in my chest. When I was sure she wasn't coming out, I stepped from the car. I walked to the dumpster. I lifted the lid. I dug through the bags until I found it. There it was. Filthy, wrinkled, and carrying the scent of pricey perfume mixed with neglect. I lifted it gently. I pressed it to me chest, and I drove home without once looking back. I arrived home shaking. I locked the door. I went straight to my bedroom. I needed a quiet room and that blanket. I needed to understand why Ashley had tossed it like worthless trash. I smoothed it across my bed with care. My palms moved across the knit. It was dirty, but whole. The lace edging was still firm. Under the lamplight, the mint looked dull. I ran my hands over the entire blanket, feeling each ridge, each stitch I'd knitted years ago. And then I found it, right at the centre, a hard, rectangular lump concealed between the fabric layers. It wasn't padding. It was something else, something someone had tucked there deliberately. My heart hammered. My hands grew slick. What was this? Why was something hidden in my granddaughter's blanket? I flipped it over. I searched for an opening, any irregular seam, and I found one. Along the bottom edge, almost invisible, ran a line of meticulous stitches in thread that perfectly matched the yarn. Someone had opened the blanket, slipped something inside, and sewn it up again so neatly it was nearly undetectable. I went to my nightstand. I took out my swing scissors, the very ones I'd used when I made the blanket years ago. My hands trembled so badly I could hardly hold them. I inhaled deeply. I located the start of the seam and began snipping slowly. Thread by thread, each tiny cut sounded thunderous in my quiet room. It felt like I was prying open something forbidden, something I had no right to touch, but I couldn't stop. I severed the last fibres. The slit opened. I slid my fingers in. They touched something cold and metallic. I eased it out, and when it sat in my palm, all the air left my lungs. It was a cell phone. Small, black, powered off, older by the look of it, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I held it as though it might explode. Questions flooded my mind like a river over its banks. Why had Ashley hidden a phone inside Isabella's blanket? How long had it been there? Why had she sewn it shut with such care? And why now, after 3 years, had she decided to throw the entire blanket away? I rummaged in my dresser. I still had an old charger, kept just in case. I plugged it into the wall. I connected the phone, and I waited. Seconds dragged like hours. My breath stayed shallow. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The screen fluttered. A faint light glimmered in a corner, charging. I waited longer, 5 minutes, 10, until finally the screen brightened completely. There was no lock, no pin, no code. It opened straight to the home screen, like someone intended it to be easy to access, or had never imagined anyone else would find it. My fingertips twitched on the glass. There were apps, messages, gallery, contacts, notes. I opened gallery first. I tapped the icon and froze. There were photos, dozens. The first was of Ashley. She sat at an upscale restaurant. She was smiling. But she wasn't alone. A man sat beside her, young, attractive. His arm draped over her shoulders. He kissed her cheek. The photo was dated. It had been taken 4 years earlier, when Matthew was alive, when Ashley was still married to my son. Something inside me cracked. I kept swiping. Ashley with the same man at the beach, in a hotel room, in a car, hugging, kissing, every photo from that same year. Ashley had been having an affair, cheating on Matthew, and he never knew, he never suspected. Tears spilled down my face. My son had loved that woman. He'd trusted her, and she'd betrayed him. But that wasn't the end. I kept digging. There were videos, several clips in a separate folder. I tapped the first. The screen went black, then the image blinked on. It looked like a home video. The camera was propped up, as if set on a shelf. I recognised the room, Ashley and Matthew's living room, the grey sofa, the coffee table, the framed painting on the wall. And then they walked in, Ashley and the same man. They entered laughing. She wore a lavender dress. He held her by the waist. He kissed her. They tumbled onto the couch. The scene was explicit, too explicit. I stopped the video. I couldn't keep watching. I felt nauseous. But I needed answers. I had to understand what I was seeing. I opened the Messages app. Long threads appeared between Ashley and a contact, saved only as H. I started reading. The messages were from 4 years ago. At first they were romantic. Ashley telling him how much she loved him, how much she missed him, how she hated pretending with Matthew. Matthew, my son, reduced to an inconvenience in her texts, an obstacle in her path. The tone darkened. The desperation grew. Ashley wrote that she wanted to be with H, that she wanted a life together, but Matthew wouldn't agree to a divorce. He was traditional. He would never let her go. Then came the message that shattered me. There has to be another way. I can't keep living like this. I need him to disappear. My hand slipped and the phone dropped onto the bed. My breath stopped. I read it over and over. I need him to disappear. It couldn't be real. It couldn't be what I thought. He picked the phone back up. I scrolled. The man, H, replied, "Don't say insane things. Just wait, we'll figure it out." But Ashley pressed harder. Message after message, more frantic. I don't want to wait. I want to be with you now. Matthew is the problem. Without him, we're free. Then, a few days later, a different kind of text. Colder. I talked to someone. Someone who can help. Just trust me. The man wrote back, alarmed. What did you do? Who did you talk to? Ashley gave no details. She only promised it would all be settled soon, that they would be free, that they could finally be together without secrecy. The messages ended abruptly, 1 week before Matthew died. Nothing more after that date, as if both had abandoned the phone and any trail it might leave. I stood from the bed. I paced the room, trying to absorb what I had uncovered. Ashley had a plan. She had spoken of making Matthew disappear, and 1 week later my son was dead. Had it truly been an accident or something else? The doctor's phrasing replayed in my head. Severe head trauma. Fall down the stairs. But now those words twisted into a new, horrifying shape. I opened notes. There was one entry. Written 2 days before Matthew died. It read, Tuesday 3 p.m. He'll be alone. Everything must look natural. An accident. No one can suspect. My knees gave way. I sank onto the bed. Tears streamed down my cheeks. My son hadn't died by accident. My son had been murdered. And Ashley, the woman he trusted, the mother of his child, had a hand in it. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone in both hands, reading and rereading those messages. Every line cut like a blade. Each sentence confirmed what my heart already sensed, and my mind dreaded to accept. Matthew hadn't died by misstep. My son was killed, and the woman who vowed to love him until death had orchestrated the very thing. She had planned his death with the same coolness people use when arranging a move or changing jobs. My tears finally ran dry. What remained was a cavern, a heavy emptiness swallowing everything. My old memories of Ashley, the image I'd built of her. In a few hours, it all crumbled. When dawn brightened the window, I made a decision. I couldn't stay quiet. I couldn't let Ashley walk free, pretending innocence, raising Isabella with those blood-stained hands, the same hands that plotted my son's death. But I needed help. I needed someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't call me crazy, someone who would believe me. I considered going to the police right away. But how could I present a phone fished out of the trash? How would I explain finding it sewn inside a blanket? It needed more. I needed the whole picture. I needed to identify the man behind the initial H, and I needed to know whether they had truly carried out the plan. I called Gloria, my neighbour of a lifetime, a 65-year-old woman who'd been my confidant since my husband died. She knows how to listen. She knows how to keep secrets. And she knows me well enough to be sure I wouldn't invent something like this. I dialed. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice sounded sleepy. Elena, are you all right? It's 6 in the morning. I drew a breath. Gloria, I need you to come over now. It's urgent. Silence, then quick rustling. I'm on my way. She hung up. 15 minutes later, she knocked at my door. I opened it. She looked at me, troubled. Her hair was scraped back into a quick ponytail. She wore a mustard-coloured sweater over her pyjamas. What happened? You look awful. I stepped aside to let her in, shut the door and led her to my bedroom. I showed her the blanket spread on the bed, the phone still charging. Then I told her everything. How I'd seen Ashley toss the blanket, how I'd rescued it, how I discovered the phone and what I'd found on it. Gloria listened without interrupting. I watched her face shift from shock to horror. When I finished, she lifted the phone with careful hands. She scrolled through the photos, the videos, the messages, the note, everything. Her fingers trembled too. When she raised her eyes to mine, tears stood there. My God, Elena, this is evidence of murder. I nodded. I know. But I can't just barge into a police station. I need more proof. I have to know who that man is. I need to understand everything before I take the next step. Gloria sat on the bed thinking. What if we check Ashley's social media? Maybe he's in her contacts. It was a solid idea. I grabbed my laptop. I pulled up Facebook. I found Ashley's profile. It wasn't locked. Everything was visible. Photos, posts, friends. I opened her friends list. Hundreds of names. Too many to click one by one. Gloria peered over my shoulder. Search for men whose names start with H. That's the initial in the phone, right? I nodded and filtered. Several names popped up. Henry, Harold, Hugh, Horace, Herbert. I opened each profile one at a time, hunting for the man from the photos, the man with Ashley in those compromising shots. Henry wasn't him. Harold wasn't either. Horace was too old. Herbert didn't match. Then I opened Hugh's profile. Hugh Miller. And there he was. The same face, the same dark eyes, the same easy smile. He was the man from the photos, the one Ashley had plotted with to remove my son from her life. It's him, I whispered. Gloria stared at the screen. Are you certain? I returned to the phone and compared pictures. There was no doubt. I went back to Hugh's Facebook. I dug deeper. Hugh Miller, 38, lived in our city, worked for a construction firm. I scrolled his public photos. There were several from years before. A few solo, others with friends. But none recent with Ashley. As if they'd scrubbed every sign of their relationship, like it had never existed. We have to find him, I said. Gloria nodded. But be careful, Elena. If he helped with Matthew's death, he could be dangerous. I knew. I didn't care. I needed answers. I needed justice for my son. I searched for Hugh elsewhere. I found his LinkedIn, construction supervisor, contacts at multiple local companies. On paper, nothing strange. A normal man with a normal-looking life, except for assisting in a murder. Gloria suggested something I hadn't dared to say aloud. What if we go to Ashley's house? We might find more, documents, emails, something that ties it all together. Risky, yes, but logical. If Ashley hid a phone inside Isabella's blanket, maybe other things were hidden too. We can't just show up, I said. We need a reason. Gloria thought for a moment. Tell her you want to see Isabella. You miss your granddaughter. While you keep Ashley busy, I can quietly look around. It wasn't perfect, but it was a plan. We decided to try that very afternoon. I texted Ashley. Hi, Ashley. I know I've been persistent lately, but I really miss Isabella. Could I stop by to see her for a little while this afternoon? 20 minutes ticked by before she answered. Hi, Elena. Today isn't great. Isabella's cranky. Maybe another day. I clenched my jaw. The same old line. Always an excuse. But this time I wouldn't accept no. Please, Ashley. Just a few minutes. I bought her a present. I'd love to hand it to her myself. Another pause. Then, fine, but only 30 minutes. I'm busy. That was all we needed. Gloria and I prepared. She'd stay in the car at first and wait for my signal. If I managed to keep Ashley chatting long enough, Gloria would come in with an excuse. We'd search for anything that could serve as additional proof. At 3 p.m, we pulled up to Ashley's house. A white two-story with a manicured lawn. The same house where Matthew died, where he supposedly fell down the stairs, where his life ended. I pressed the doorbell. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might climb out of my chest. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Ashley stood there, black pants, a salmon-coloured blouse, hair sleek, makeup immaculate. Hi, Elena, she said, her smile cool. Come in. I stepped inside. Lavender scented the air. Everything looked spotless, arranged, almost too perfectly arranged, like nothing terrible had ever happened inside those walls. Where's Isabella? I asked. Upstairs in her room. I'll get her. Ashley climbed the staircase, the same staircase where Matthew had fallen. I studied each step. I searched for a sign, any mark. Nothing. Ashley returned with Isabella in her arms. My granddaughter seemed so much bigger. She was 3 now. Her dark hair curled softly at her shoulders. Her eyes, Matthew's eyes. Seeing her split me in two, pain and love at once. Hi, Grandma, Isabella said in that sweet little voice. She stretched her arms toward me. I gathered her in. I hugged her tight. She smelled like baby shampoo, like innocence. She was the last pure thing left of my son, the only good that survived all that darkness. I missed you so much, my love, I whispered. She grinned and showed me a small brown teddy bear. She began telling me a story about it. I listened, while watching Ashley from the corner of my eye. Ashley stood by the window staring at her phone. She looked distracted, edgy, as though waiting for someone or something. I seized the moment. I pulled out my own phone. I sent a quick text to Gloria. Come in now. Within minutes the doorbell rang. Ashley's head snapped up. Expecting someone? I asked, keeping my voice light. She frowned and shook her head, then walked to the door and opened it. Gloria stood there, smiling politely. Hello, sorry to bother you. I'm Gloria, Elena's neighbour. I came with her but left a bag in the car. May I use your restroom? It's urgent. Ashley hesitated. She glanced at Gloria, then at me. I gave a small, casual nod, as if this were perfectly normal. Sure, Ashley said at last. Down the hall, first door on the left. Gloria stepped inside. She flashed me a quick look. I understood. She'd search while I kept Ashley occupied. I needed time. I began to chat, asking Ashley about work, how she was managing, whether she needed help with Isabella. Ashley's replies were clipped, short. She kept glancing at her phone. Restless. I kept talking, filling the space. I mentioned I'd found old photos of Matthew, that someday I wanted to show them to Isabella, so she could know her father. At Matthew's name, Ashley stiffened. Yes, well, when she's older. Her voice sounded different, sharper. She glanced toward the hallway. Your friend is taking a while. Maybe she's not feeling well. I improvised. You know how it is. At our age, everything takes a little longer. Ashley looked unconvinced. She rose. I'm going to check on her. My pulse surged. I had to stall her. Wait, Ashley. There's something I wanted to ask. She paused, eyeing me. What? I drew a breath. I had to make this feel natural. Isabella's blanket, the one I knitted. I haven't seen it recently. Do you still use it? Her face shifted. For a blink, I saw panic in her eyes. Then it vanished. The blanket? Yes, of course. It's in the wash. It got dirty. She was lying. I knew it, but I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Oh, good. I'm glad you still have it. Matthew loved that blanket. I spoke my son's name on purpose. I wanted to see what it stirred. Ashley pressed her lips into a line. Matthew loved a lot of things. There was a bite in her tone, resentment simmering underneath. Before I could respond, Gloria appeared in the hall. Sorry to take so long. I'm feeling better now. Ashley watched her with narrowed eyes. That's good. Gloria crossed to me and touched my shoulder, lightly. The signal. She'd found something. We needed to go. Well, Ashley, we won't keep you. Thank you for letting us see Isabella. I stood. I kissed my granddaughter's forehead. I love you, little one. Grandma will come back soon. Isabella hugged me tight. Bye, Grandma. Ashley walked us to the door. The moment we stepped outside, she shut it fast, almost slamming it. Gloria and I moved to the car in silence. We climbed in. I shut the door. What did you find? Gloria reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. In her bedroom, closet, under some boxes. I slid the papers out. Inside were documents, Matthew's life insurance paperwork. My son had a $500,000 policy, with Ashley as the sole beneficiary. The entire sum had been paid out 3 months after his death. There were also bank statements, large transfers, including one for $200,000 to an account under the name Hugh Miller. My God, I breathed. She paid him. She paid him to help kill Matthew. Gloria nodded. There's more. She drew out another sheet, a copy of a birth certificate, Isabella's, but something was wrong. The mother's name wasn't Ashley. It read Lydia Torres. Who is Lydia Torres? I asked. Gloria shook her head. I don't know. But according to this, she's Isabella's biological mother, not Ashley. Time seemed to stop. None of it made sense. Isabella wasn't Ashley's child, but Ashley had been visibly pregnant. I'd seen her. We all had. Gloria pointed to the dates. Look at Isabella's birth date. It doesn't match what Ashley told everyone. It's off by 2 months, I checked. Gloria was right. According to the certificate, Isabella had been born months earlier than Ashley announced. This makes no sense. Did Ashley fake a pregnancy? Did she steal a baby? I don't know, Gloria said softly. But we need to find Lydia Torres. She's the key. We returned to my house, Gloria at my side. We spread everything across the coffee table, the phone, the photos, the messages, the insurance forms, the birth certificate. Pieces began to click together. Ashley had orchestrated Matthew's murder for money. She'd used Hugh. She'd paid him with a chunk of the payout. But there was another thread, the story of Lydia and Isabella. We have to search for Lydia, I said, opening my laptop. I typed her name, Lydia Torres. Dozens of results appeared, but none fit. I added our city, and then I found something, a local news piece from 4 years back. The headline, Young Mother Missing, Family Pleads for Help Finding Lydia Torres. A photo accompanied it, a 23-year-old with long hair and sad eyes. The article said she had vanished, leaving behind her 2-month-old baby. Isabella, I whispered. Lydia vanished, her baby left behind. Gloria read over my shoulder. Or maybe she didn't leave her. Maybe Ashley made her disappear. I slid down my spine. You think Ashley killed Lydia too?
I don't know.
But think, Ashley needed a baby to complete the perfect family image with Matthew. Maybe she met Lydia. Maybe she took advantage. And when Lydia wasn't needed anymore, Gloria couldn't finish. The theory was horrific, but it fit. I searched for follow-ups. Another article surfaced, much more recent, just 6 months ago. Remains of missing woman identified as Lydia Torres. They had found her body in an abandoned lot outside the city. The case had been closed. Cause of death, head trauma, the same as Matthew. It couldn't be coincidence. Ashley killed her, I said, voice shaking. She killed Lydia to keep Isabella, and then killed Matthew for the insurance money. Gloria squeezed my hand. Elena, this is too big. We need the police. She was right. We couldn't keep investigating alone. This was evidence of 2 murders, maybe more. We needed professionals. I picked up my phone, looked up the local precinct and dialed. A calm male voice answered, Central Precinct, how can I help? I drew in a breath. I need to report a murder. 2 murders. And I have evidence. They set an appointment for the next day. A detective named Jack Roberts would take the case. They asked me to bring everything. I didn't sleep. I tossed, replaying everything. Ashley's lies, my son's death, Lydia Torres and Isabella, my granddaughter in every way that mattered, even if not by blood. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I had to protect that child. At 9 the next morning, Gloria and I arrived at the precinct. The building was grey and austere, its walls smelling faintly of coffee and worn paper. A receptionist greeted us politely. We explained that we had an appointment with Detective Jack Roberts. She asked us to wait in a small windowless room that buzzed with the hum of fluorescent lights. 15 minutes crawled by before a tall man in his mid-40s appeared in the doorway. He had salt and pepper hair, neatly trimmed, and a steady, no-nonsense gaze. Dressed in a beige shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark slacks, he carried an air of calm authority. "Mrs. Elena?" he asked. I nodded. I'm Detective Roberts. "Please come in." He led us down a narrow hall lined with corkboards full of case photos and scribbled notes. His office was small, packed with filing cabinets and folders that seemed to hold decades of grief and secrets. There were framed commendations on one wall and a faded photograph of a family on his desk. He motioned for us to sit. "Start from the beginning," he said, taking out a worn notebook. So I did. I began with Matthew's death, the supposed accident, Ashley's hysterical phone call, and how my life had crumbled that day. I told him how I'd seen Ashley throw Isabella's blanket in the trash, how I'd rescued it, how I found the hidden cell phone, the photos of her with another man, the messages plotting my son's murder, the note marked Tuesday 3 p.m, make it look natural. Then I showed him everything, each file, every printed document, the bank transfers to Hugh Miller, the birth certificate naming Lydia Torres as the mother, the articles about Lydia's disappearance and her body's discovery. Detective Roberts didn't interrupt. He listened, eyes steady, occasionally jotting brief notes. His face hardened only slightly as he reviewed the photos, and he murmured quietly when he reached the note about the murder plan. When I finally finished, my voice was raw. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "This is serious," he said at last, his tone grave. "Very serious. If what you've brought me checks out, we're looking at 2 premeditated homicides, possibly a third if we confirm the identity of the child's biological father." That last line hit me like a slap. The biological father. I had almost forgotten that if Isabella wasn't Ashley's child, she had another parent out there somewhere, a man who might have been just as deceived as Matthew. "Do you know anything about him?" the detective asked. I shook my head. "No, we haven't found a trace." He made a note. "I'll look into it. But first I'll need to verify this evidence." "What will you do?" I asked, my heart hammering. "I'm reopening your son's case," he said firmly. I'll request an exhumation and a second autopsy. I'll also re-examine the death of Lydia Torres and question Hugh Miller. If these dots connect, we'll move fast. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Someone finally believed me. And Ashley? I asked quietly. Will you arrest her? Not yet, he replied. I need enough to secure a warrant. If she suspects we're onto her, she could run, or worse. His logic was sound, but fear knotted my chest. In the meantime, Isabella is still with her, I said. Detective Roberts met my gaze. I understand your worry, but legally Ashley is the guardian. Without a court order, I can't remove the child. The phone is compelling, but any good lawyer could argue it was planted. We need more. Physical evidence, witnesses, something that ties her directly. How long will it take? Gloria asked from beside me. It depends. Weeks if we're lucky. Months if we're not months. The word burned like acid. I couldn't bear the thought of Isabella spending even one more week under Ashley's roof. There's something else, I said. Yesterday Ashley seemed nervous. She kept checking her phone, pacing like she expected someone or something. He jotted that down too. I'll have surveillance placed discreetly outside her house. If she tries to flee or harm the child, we'll know. That brought a faint relief. At least she would be watched. We exchanged numbers. Call me if anything strange happens, he told me. Any time, day or night. When Gloria and I left the precinct, the sunlight outside felt too bright for what we'd just discussed. What now? She asked quietly. Now we wait, I said bitterly. We wait and pray they find enough to stop her. The waiting. The following days crawled. Every hour felt endless. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I kept picturing Isabella, her little hands, her curls, and wondering if Ashley was planning something. Detective Roberts called every few days with updates. He had interrogated Hugh Miller. At first, Hugh denied everything. He claimed he barely knew Ashley, said they'd just worked together. But once shown the photos and the messages from the phone, his defences cracked. He admitted the affair. He confirmed Ashley had spoken about getting rid of Matthew, but swore he hadn't agreed. He insisted she'd been obsessed, unstable, yet the financial records told another story. When the detective confronted him with the $200,000 transfer, Hugh floundered. He called it a loan. He said Ashley had given it to him to start a business. But there were no contracts, no receipts, no proof. I'm holding him for 24 hours, Detective Roberts told me over the phone. If he cracks, we'll have our link. If not, I'll have to release him. That night, Hugh requested a lawyer and shut his mouth. He was released the next morning. Still, the detective pressed on. They exhumed Matthew's body for a second autopsy. The results came back a week later, and they changed everything. There were bruises on his wrists, faint but unmistakable. Signs of restraint. He hadn't fallen accidentally. Someone had held him down before he hit those stairs. My son had been murdered. When Detective Roberts told me, I wept, but beneath the sorrow was vindication. The truth hurt, yet it was necessary. The detectives dug deeper into Lydia Torres's case as well. They discovered that the lot where her body had been found was owned by a construction company, Hugh Miller's employer. He'd had access to the site and likely used it to bury her. The adoption records were equally damning. Legally, Isabella was still listed as Ashley and Matthew's biological child, but there was no adoption paperwork, none at all. Someone had falsified the birth documents. Someone had erased Lydia's existence. We're piecing it together, Detective Roberts told me one evening. Step by step. Soon we'll have enough to move. Another week passed. 7 days of agony and sleepless nights before the call finally came at dawn. The arrest, Mrs. Elena, Detective Roberts said urgently. We need you at the precinct right now. It's about Ashley. My heart stuttered. What happened? She tried to flee, he said. We caught her at the airport. She had tickets for herself and the child. I threw on the first clothes I could find and rushed out. Gloria joined me, pale and tense. At the precinct, The detective met us and led us to an observation room. Behind a pane of glass, Ashley sat in a metal chair, handcuffed. Her perfect hair was a tangled mess, her makeup streaked. The icy composure she always wore had cracked. "We intercepted her 2 hours ago," Roberts explained. She had counterfeit passports for herself and Isabella, and nearly $500,000 in cash spread across several suitcases. My knees nearly buckled. "Where's Isabella?" "She's safe," he assured me. "She's with social services." "Scared but unharmed. You'll be asked to confirm guardianship, so she can stay with you temporarily." Tears welled in my eyes. Isabella was free of Ashley at last. "I want to see her," I whispered. "You will," he said. "But first you should see this." He turned on a monitor. A video played. Ashley's interrogation. She sat across from another detective, arms folded, jaw set. "I have nothing to say," she muttered. "I want a lawyer." "He's on his way," the detective opposite her replied calmly. "But maybe you can tell us why you were fleeing the country with $500,000 in cash." Ashley stared at the table, silent. "We know about Hugh," the detective went on. "We know about Lydia and about Matthew. We have the messages, the transfers, the phone you hid in Isabella's blanket." Ashley's face drained of colour. "That phone, how did—" She stopped herself mid-sentence, realising she had just confirmed it was hers. "Your mother-in-law found it," the detective said quietly. "The same woman whose son you took. She's the one who saved the little girl you were about to drag across the world." Ashley's expression twisted from fear to fury. "That meddling old witch!" she spat. "I knew she was snooping. That's why I had to leave before she ruined everything." "Disappear?" the detective asked smoothly. "Like Lydia Torres did?" The name froze her. Her breathing quickened. "I don't know who that is," she said flatly. The detective slid a photo across the table. Lydia, smiling, alive. "You do know her," he said. "Isabella's real mother. The young woman whose body was found buried in a lot connected to your lover's company." Ashley's eyes darted everywhere but the picture. "I want a lawyer," she repeated. "Of course," the detective said. "But understand this, there's no escaping what's coming. We have you for double homicide, insurance fraud, falsifying documents. You're going away for life." The video ended. Detective Roberts turned to me. "She still won't confess," he said quietly. "But she will. The evidence is overwhelming. What about Hugh?" I asked. "He's in custody. He's talking now, blaming her for everything, saying she manipulated him, that he was terrified of her." I wasn't surprised. "Tell me what else he said." The detective flipped open his notebook. According to Hugh, Ashley approached him about 4 years ago. They were already having an affair. She told him she was miserable, that Matthew was dull and controlling, that she wanted freedom. She proposed the plan: wait until Matthew was home alone, push him down the stairs, make it look accidental. They'd split the life insurance payout and start fresh somewhere new. My stomach churned. Hearing my son's death reduced to a calculated plan made me want to scream. "At first," the detective continued, "Hugh says he refused. But Ashley convinced him, showed him the policy documents, promised him 200,000 and a life together. Eventually he gave in." Gloria, silent until now, spoke softly. "And Lydia? What does he say about her?" The detective turned another page. "That's where it gets darker," he said. "Ashley met Lydia at the hospital. Lydia was a patient, young, pregnant, alone. Ashley saw an opportunity. She befriended her, offered her help, told her she could stay with her after the baby was born. Lydia trusted her. I felt sick. According to Hugh," the detective went on, "Ashley faked a pregnancy of her own. She told Matthew she was expecting, wore loose clothes, pretended to be ill. When Lydia gave birth, Ashley took the baby. She told Matthew she'd delivered at home, that it happened suddenly. Lydia, meanwhile..." He hesitated. "What did she do to her?" I whispered. "She drugged her," he said softly. "Lydia never woke up." Ashley and Hugh took her body to that construction site. Same cause of death as Matthew, head trauma. Tears streamed down my face. Ashley wasn't just a murderer, she was a monster. And the baby's father? I managed to ask. Lydia never listed one, Robert said. Either she didn't know or didn't want to. We're still checking. I wiped my eyes. Please. I need to see Isabella. He led me through the hallways to a waiting area filled with toys. A social worker stood there. In the corner, playing quietly with colourful blocks, was my granddaughter. Isabella, I breathed. She looked up, saw me, and ran straight into my arms. Grandma? I hugged her tightly. She clung to my neck. I'm here, my love. You're safe now. The social worker approached, smiling kindly. Mrs. Elilanaina? I'm Mary from Child Protective Services. Detective Roberts briefed me. We'll need to do a quick evaluation before Isabella can go with you, but it's clear she's comfortable with you. I'll do whatever's required, I said. I just want her safe, Mary nodded. I can tell she loves you. That matters most. A new beginning. I spent the rest of that day with Isabella, talking, holding her, feeding her snacks from the vending machine. I told her she'd be staying with me for a while. I didn't mention Ashley, not yet. She was too young to grasp the nightmare that had unfolded. She just needed love and reassurance. Mary visited my home later that week, inspecting every room. She asked about my health, finances, and support network. Gloria was there, vouching for me every step. At the end of the interview, Mary smiled warmly. You're approved for temporary custody. There will be follow-ups and a hearing later, but for now Isabella is officially in your care. I signed the papers through a blur of tears. Then Isabella slipped her tiny hand into mine, and we walked out into the sunlight together. Gloria drove us home. Isabella fell asleep on my lap during the ride, her small chest rising and falling against my heart. At home, I laid her gently on my bed and pulled a blanket over her. I sat beside her, watching her sleep. She looked so much like Matthew, those same eyes, that same gentle mouth. Though we didn't share blood, she was his daughter in every way that counted. I promise I'll protect you, I whispered. No one will ever hurt you again. Gloria stood in the doorway. You did it, Elena, she said softly. You saved that little girl. I shook my head. I just did what any grandmother would, what I should have done sooner. Don't blame yourself, Gloria said. You couldn't have known what Ashley really was. Maybe she was right, but guilt still gnawed at me. If I'd questioned things earlier, if I hadn't trusted so blindly, maybe Matthew and Lydia would still be alive. What happens now? Gloria asked. Detective Roberts will keep building the case, I said. There'll be trials, testimonies, everything, but Ashley will pay. And Hugh too, Gloria nodded. Good. They deserve nothing less. The next few months became a blur. The case exploded across local news, then national outlets picked it up. Cameras clustered outside the courthouse on hearing days like a flock of crows, their lenses hungry for any shred of drama. Headlines labelled Ashley the angel-faced nurse and the Black Widow. Reporters speculated endlessly about motives, about the money, about the baby who wasn't hers. I tried to shield Isabella from every bit of it. I enrolled her in preschool. We bought new clothes, picture books, a tiny backpack with stars on the straps. I turned the spare room into her space, soft yellow paint, shelves filled with storybooks and stuffed animals, a nightlight that projected constellations onto the ceiling. I wanted her world to be gentle again, to drown out the echoes of sirens and interrogation rooms. But nights were hard. Isabella woke up crying, searching for a mother who wasn't really a mother at all. She called for Ashley, because that was the only word she knew for safety. I held her, rocked her, sang until her little heartbeat slowed. I didn't tell her that her mum was in a cell, not yet. She needed comfort, not truth's sharp edges. Slowly, so slowly, the nightmares came less often. Her laughter returned like spring after a long winter. Detective Roberts kept me in the loop. Hugh had agreed to a plea deal. He would testify against Ashley in exchange for 25 years instead of life. It enraged me that a man who helped destroy my child could bargain for time, but I understood. His testimony might be the hammer that finally nailed Ashley's lies to the wall. Ashley refused any plea. Her attorney claimed the evidence was circumstantial, that the phone's chain of custody was questionable, that Hugh was a liar trying to save himself. The prosecution, undeterred, moved forward. The trial date was set, 3 months out. One quiet afternoon, while Isabella napped under her Constellation nightlight, my phone rang. It was Detective Roberts. His voice had that heavy, careful tone I'd come to recognize. "Mrs. Ella Lanena, I need you to come down here. There's something you should see. It concerns the child's biological father." My stomach tightened into a fist. "Is he alive?" "I'd rather explain in person," he said gently. "Can you come this afternoon?" I asked Gloria to sit with Isabella and drove to the precinct, palms sweating against the wheel just as they had the day Matthew died. In his office, Roberts had a folder already open. He gestured to a chair. "You told me Lydia never listed a father," he began. "We kept digging, friends, co-workers, anyone who might have known her well." He slid out a photo, a hospital ID badge. A young man with dark hair and pale eyes stared out from behind the plastic. The resemblance stole my breath, not to Matthew, but to the eyes I saw in Isabella's face. His name was Adrian Wells, the detective said, a lab technician at the same hospital where Matthew and Ashley worked. "Witnesses say he and Lydia were romantically involved. Where is he?" I asked, though I knew. The dread told me. Roberts's mouth tightened. "Dead, 3.5 years ago. About 6 months after Lydia vanished. Reported as a single vehicle accident, car off the highway down a ravine." I closed my eyes. "Another accident," I whispered. He nodded. "And the first person to report it, the one who called it in? Ashley. She claimed she happened upon the crash while driving home from her shift. By the time emergency services arrived, he was gone." My skin went cold. "You think she killed him?" "I can't prove it yet," he said. "But the timing, the connection to Lydia, the method, it all fits. We've reopened the file." I stared at the photo of Adrian's badge. How many people had she removed, quietly, efficiently, whenever they became inconvenient? The next morning, the detective arrived at my door, urgency in his eyes. "We found more," he said without preamble. We pulled medical logs from the hospital and flagged every death under Ashley's care that raised even a faint question. He paused. "There are 3 elderly patients, cardiac arrests, all within the last 4 years. At the time, nothing looked off. But both medical and financial audits reveal that 2 of them changed their wills shortly before dying, donations to the hospital that never actually arrived. The funds were diverted through shell accounts." I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "Are you saying she poisoned her patients?" "It's a possibility," he said. "We're exhuming bodies to look for specific compounds, drugs that in small doses could trigger heart failure, especially in frail patients. The accounts receiving the diverted funds trace back to entities tied to either Ashley or Hugh." "Money," I said, the word bitter on my tongue. "It's always money," Roberts nodded. "And control," he added. "Hugh is suddenly very cooperative. He says Ashley hoarded documents, kept leverage. Bank records, contracts, maybe even videos. He claims she recorded him during parts of the plan for Matthew. Insurance in case he ever turned on her." "Where?" I asked. "He doesn't know." "He thinks it's hidden in the house somewhere, behind a wall under floorboards, a safe no one else knows about." "Then find it," I said. Too fast, too fierce. "Please. We've secured a warrant," he replied. "We searched today." I insisted on going. I wanted to see her carefully curated life pulled apart piece by piece. Officers moved through rooms methodically, drawers out, rugs lifted, panels tapped for hollow echoes. Hours passed. Then a shout from the basement. "Over here!" We hurried down. An officer had dragged a dusty bookcase away from a concrete wall. Behind it, partially plastered over, was a small embedded safe, discreet, professional, almost invisible. The locksmith took less than 20 minutes to breach it. Inside was an archive, neatly labelled folders, USB drives, 2 external hard drives, and stacks of printed photos. The orderliness was chilling. Crime committed, and catalogued. It's like she wanted a museum of her own depravity, one officer muttered. We carried the contents upstairs. Roberts connected a drive to a laptop and opened a folder. Names, dates, sums, screenshots of bank transfers, copies of falsified forms, then a folder labelled simply Matthew. He clicked. Videos populated the screen, short clips with timestamps hovering around the week of my son's death. The first showed Ashley and Hugh in the kitchen, speaking in low voices. The audio was faint, but words like alone, timing, and stairs were clear enough to make my stomach lurch. Another clip caught the two of them returning through the front door at a time that matched the day Matthew died. Ashley's face blank as a sheet of marble. Then a final file. A video of Ashley, centered in the frame as if she'd positioned the camera intentionally. She sat very straight, hair immaculate, eyes unblinking at the lens. If you're watching this, she said, voice calm, it means I miscalculated. Let me be clear. I regret nothing. I take what I am owed. Matthew was weak. Lydia was a means. Adrian was a threat. The old ones were opportunities. I removed obstacles. People call that monstrous. I call it necessary. Robert stopped the tape. No one spoke for a moment. The only sound was the laptop's fan and my own breathing, loud as breaking waves in my ears. With this, he said finally, her case is sealed. The trial 2 months later, the trial began. The courtroom overflowed. Journalists, law students, retirees who watched court shows on TV, families of the dead. I took a seat in the front row. I wanted Ashley to see me. I wanted my face to be the last thing she glimpsed before the cell door clanged shut. They brought her in wearing a charcoal suit and a plain white blouse. No makeup, her hair yanked back. She looked smaller now, stripped of the elegance she wore like armour. Our eyes met. What I saw in hers wasn't guilt. It was fury. Fury at being caught, at having her game exposed. The prosecutor, a steady woman in her 40s, stood with an economy of motion and began to assemble the narrative like a watchmaker setting gears. The phone hidden in a baby blanket. The messages with H bank transfers. The second autopsy's findings. Restraint marks at the wrists. Trauma indicating a deliberate push. The lot tied to Hugh's company where Lydia was buried. The shell accounts, the safe. And then, calmly, she played Ashley's own words to the jury. Hugh took the stand in shackles. He looked diminished, cheekbones stark, eyes bruised by sleeplessness. When he spoke, his voice shook. He described Ashley's seduction, the promises, the plan rehearsed in whispers. I held Matthew's arms. Hugh said, barely audible. Ashley pushed him. He fell. I heard his head hit. And I did nothing. She called 911 and pretended to panic. I stood there and let it happen. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Hearing my child's last moments mapped out like this lodged a shard of ice beneath my ribs. Still, I needed to hear it. Truth carves. It also cleans. Hugh talked about Lydia. Ashley gave her a drug. She went limp. I carried her to the site. Ashley used a rock. We buried her. It took less than an hour. Murmurs rippled through the room. The judge's gavel restored silence. He told them about Adrian, the lonely road, the deliberate strike from behind, the staged discovery. Ashley's attorney tried to shred him, painting him as a liar looking for a shorter sentence, but the evidence didn't bend. Hugh's testimony rested on a bedrock of records and footage that matched his claims. Forensic experts followed, methodical voices explaining bruising patterns, The specific sedatives found in the exhumed elderly patients, the financial tracing of diverted donations. Former co-workers described Ashley's polished charm, the way she swept into rooms like a favoured daughter of the hospital. Surviving patients recounted an uncanny attentiveness that left them feeling simultaneously cared for and strangely observed. Neighbours swore they'd heard thuds and whispers on certain afternoons long past. 3 weeks later, the attorneys gave closing arguments. The prosecutor's words were simple, controlled flame. Ashley Wilson is not a person who made an impulsive mistake, she said. She is deliberate, cold. She killed for money, for convenience, for the pleasure of control. She stole a baby. She orchestrated her husband's death. She erased a young mother and extinguished the elderly like switching off a light. The evidence is not just abundant. It is woven together by her own hands, in her own files, with her own voice. The defence tried a final time to cast doubt, to persuade the jury that all this was the fever dream of a scorned lover and a grieving mother-in-law. But doubt cannot take root in ground paved with proof. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they filed back in, the air felt electric, as if a storm hovered inside the wood-panelled walls. The foreman stood, paper trembling only slightly in his fingers. In the matter of the murder of Matthew Stone, guilty. The murder of Lydia Torres, guilty. The murder of Adrian Wells, guilty. The murders of 3 elderly patients under care, guilty. All counts. Ashley didn't flinch. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight, as the judge pronounced sentence, 6 consecutive life terms with no possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted into a hum of whispers and stifled sobs. I exhaled a breath I'd been holding for 3 years. Justice had a sound. It was this, the low thunder of a community acknowledging the truth. Afterward, Detective Roberts found me in the corridor. "Justice," he said simply. I nodded. "Yes," I managed. "But nothing brings him back." He rested a hand on my shoulder. "You saved the girl," he said. "That matters, and it did." Isabella was the point now, the bright line forward. After the verdict, we went home. Gloria had been watching Isabella, who was arranging a tea party for her dolls at the kitchen table. When she saw me, she barreled into my legs. "Grandma, where were you?" "I had something important to finish," I told her, crouching to meet her eyes. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Life grew quieter as the media drifted on to fresh stories. I focused on building a bright, ordinary childhood for Isabella. Picnics in the park, bedtime stories, cookies that left flour smudges on our noses. She began calling me Mum Grandma one evening, serious as a judge. "Is that okay?" she asked. "Because you're my grandma, but also like my mum." I laughed softly through tears. "It's perfect," I said. And it was years edged forward. The Constellation nightlight gave way to chapter books and school projects. Isabella learned to read, then devoured everything she could get her hands on. Sometimes I caught a flash of Matthew in her smile, and the ache that came with it wasn't only pain anymore. It was also gratitude. When she turned 7, she asked the question I'd been bracing for. "Mom, Grandma, where is my first mom, the one who carried me?" I held her hand. "Her name was Lydia," I said. "She was brave and kind, and she loved you very much." "Why isn't she here?" "She had to go to heaven," I told her. "Before she went, she made sure you would be safe and loved." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was the truth she could hold without it breaking her. "And my dad?" she asked softly. "His name was Matthew," I said, the words a prayer. "He was my son, and he would have adored you. So you're really my grandma," she said, eyes shining. "Yes," I nodded. "We're tied together by the heart." When she turned 16, I told her everything, the long, hard story from the blanket to the verdict. We cried, she asked questions. We took our time. At the end, she held my hands and said, "Thank you for saving me, for giving me a life." "You saved me too," I said. "After I lost your dad, You gave me a reason to keep waking up. We hugged in the quiet of the kitchen. Healing is not a single moment. It's a series of small, steady ones, and that hug was one of them. One day, Isabella surprised me with a gift, lavender wrapping, a shy smile. Inside was a mint green blanket she had knitted herself. The same pattern, the same tenderness in every stitch. We laid it on my bed next to the original one, now clean and carefully mended. 2 blankets, 2 errors. The first had secrets stitched into its seams. The second was all promise. Do you think Lydia would be proud of me? Isabella asked that evening, her voice trembling and hopeful. I'm certain of it, I said. She'd be proud of your strength and your kindness and the way you love. And you, Mum, Grandma? Are you proud? I looked into the eyes that carried so many stories. More than proud, I said. You're my reason. We visited the cemetery together not long after. Lilacs for Matthew, white roses for Lydia. I knelt by my son's grave and told him about Isabella's science project. Her laugh, the way she scrunches her nose when she's trying not to smile. Then we walked to Lydia's resting place. The headstone was simple. I traced the letters of her name. Hello, Lydia, I said softly. We never met, but I have loved your daughter as my own. She is safe. She is happy. A breeze lifted the leaves, and the light felt like a hand on my shoulder. We went home at dusk. Isabella set the table. We ate, we told stories, we watched the stars come out. Later, I wrapped myself in the blanket she had made and thought of the long road from terror to tenderness. The old knit had exposed lies and delivered justice. The new knit promised a future, ordinary days, soft mornings, laughter that didn't carry an undertow of fear. I understood something as I drifted toward sleep. The truth always finds a path, even if it must travel hidden inside the threads of a simple blanket. And love, the stubborn, everyday kind, outlives the darkest designs. Years rolled by with a quiet steadiness, the kind that heals without asking for attention. Isabella grew into a bright, compassionate young woman. She had Matthew's focus, Lydia's soft grace, and an inner fire all her own. She finished high school with honours, her laughter filling every corner of the house that had once known only silence. Now she's 21, a medical student determined to become a paediatrician. She says she wants to help children who've lived through hard beginnings, children like herself, who know what it feels like to lose everything and still be loved back into life. When she told me that, my heart swelled with pride so deep it almost hurt. Sometimes I look at her and wonder how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't seen Ashley that day, if I hadn't noticed the blanket tumbling into the trash, hadn't followed my instinct to rescue it. If I'd driven past pretending not to notice, Ashley might still be free. She might have kept killing quietly, hidden behind that angelic smile, and Isabella, my sweet, brave Isabella, would have grown up in the hands of the woman who murdered her real mother and her adoptive father. But destiny, or perhaps something greater, intervened. That afternoon, maybe it was Matthew whispering, "To me from wherever good souls go." Maybe Lydia's spirit tugged at my heart, guiding me toward the truth. Whatever force it was, it gave me the strength to act when everything in me wanted to stay numb. Gloria still comes over for tea every afternoon. She's 83 now, still sharp as a tack, though her knees complain more than they used to. I'm 87, and together we laugh about our aches, our shared memories, and the lives we somehow stitched back together from all that chaos. Sometimes we sit on the porch and watch Isabella's car pull into the driveway, and Gloria always says the same thing with a proud smile. "You saved that girl, Elena. You gave her a life." I always answer the same way. We both did. One autumn afternoon, the sky amber and soft, Gloria asked the question she always circles back to. "Do you ever think about her?" I didn't need to ask who she meant. Ashley. The name still tasted bitter, like metal even after all these years. "Sometimes," I admitted. I wonder if she ever felt remorse or fear or anything real. Gloria shook her head slowly. People like her don't feel. They calculate. They take. She's right, of course. Detective Roberts told me long ago that even in prison, Ashley never admitted guilt. During interviews, she spoke of her crimes as if they were achievements, as if she were the hero of her own twisted story. She insisted she had done what was necessary, that the world had shortchanged her, and that she merely took what she deserved. To her dying breath, I suspect she will see herself as the victim. Hugh, on the other hand, did show remorse. From his cell, he sent letters addressed to me and to the families of the other victims. He begged forgiveness. I never replied. How does a mother forgive the man who held her son down while he was murdered? But still there was something pitiful about him, a man so weak he let evil lead him by the hand. He died 5 years ago from a heart attack in prison. When I heard the news, I felt nothing. No triumph, no sadness, just silence. It was one more door closing in a corridor of old ghosts. Ashley remains alive, serving 6 consecutive life sentences in a maximum security prison. Sometimes, reporters still send letters asking for interviews, hoping I'll comment on her. I never do. There's nothing left to say. She is where she belongs. Behind steel and shadow, far from the world she once corrupted. Isabella once asked me if I wanted to visit her. To see the woman who had shaped our tragedy, I refused immediately. I don't need to see her, I told her. I don't need her explanations or her lies. Knowing that she can never hurt anyone again, that's enough. Isabella nodded, understanding. For her, Ashley isn't a person anymore. She's a warning, a ghost, a reminder of how darkness can wear a charming smile. Isabella's family now is here. Me, Gloria, her friends, the people who truly love her. Her world is bright, full of laughter and late-night study sessions, and the kind of peace that once felt impossible. A few months ago, she gave me a gift wrapped in lavender paper. "Open it," she said, smiling. Inside was a brand new blanket, mint green, hand-knitted, every loop even and perfect. "I made it myself," she said proudly. "I wanted to recreate the blanket that brought us together, the one that saved me." Tears blurred my sight. I hugged her close. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." That night, I laid the new blanket on my bed beside the old one, the one that had started everything, 2 mirrors of time. The first carried secrets, fear and tragedy woven into its fibres. The second carried only warmth and love. As I ran my hands over both, I realised how far we had come. The old blanket had exposed lies, unveiled a killer, and freed the truth. The new one symbolised everything that came after, the healing, the laughter, the light. During dinner that evening, Isabella spoke softly, her eyes thoughtful. "I've been thinking about Lydia," she said. "About my biological mom. I wish I could have met her." I reached across the table and held her hand. "So do I said. "From everything I've learned, she was brave and kind. She was scared, but she loved you fiercely. That love is what saved you. Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Isabella asked, tears shining in her eyes. "I know she would," I said without hesitation. "And so would your dad, Matthew. They both watch over you, my love. You're the best parts of them. Strong, gentle, good." She smiled, wiping her eyes. "And you, Mum, Grandma? Are you proud of me?" I smiled back through my own tears. "More than you'll ever know. You gave my life meaning again. You saved me as much as I saved you." That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone with both blankets folded across my lap. I traced the stitches of the old one, the secret that had unmasked evil. I touched the new one, the promise of peace. For a long time, I thought the first blanket was cursed, that it had carried only pain. But now I see it differently. It was never cursed. It was chosen to reveal the truth, to save a child, to bring justice. It was the bridge between darkness and light. And the new blanket. Its hope made tangible, every knot a reminder that love can grow even from the ruins of grief, every thread a silent prayer that Isabella will live a life untouched by the shadows that haunted ours. Sometimes, late at night, I take them both out, the old and the new, and set them side by side. One tells the story of what was lost, the other of what was found. Together they are the story of us. Last spring, Isabella took me to the cemetery again. We visited Matthew and Lydia's graves. Just as we always do, I brought lilacs for my son, white roses for Lydia. The sky was bright, the air gentle. I knelt and whispered, "Your daughter is safe. She's loved. You can rest now." A breeze swept through the trees, and I felt it, the quiet peace of two souls finally at rest. We walked back to the car hand in hand. As the sun dipped low, I realized something profound. Secrets may bury themselves deep, but truth has a way of surfacing, sometimes wrapped in soft yarn and love's persistence. And love, no matter how battered or tested, always endures. That old mint-green blanket was never just fabric. It was the voice of truth, the map to justice, the heartbeat of a mother's love. And now, thanks to Isabella, its echo will live on in the new one, a legacy of healing, of family, of strength. When I close my eyes at night, I no longer dream of Ashley or of Matthew's fall, or of Lydia's final moments. I dream of gardens and laughter, of Isabella's smile, of a future free of pain. For the first time in decades, peace feels permanent. Love survived, and in the end, that's the only story that matters.